Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Seymour with the Optimal Response Initiative. Today we are talking about emotions, which I like to refer to as emotes, energy and motion. Emotions, the root of emotions is the word emote. Emote means to move up and out. It means energy and motion moving up and out within us. I liken this to move out in the military. When we are told to move out in the military, we don't move out until we have proper intel, until we have planned, prepared, trained, we've studied the culture, the lay of the land, we have resources, we have backup plans, etc. The same is true for thriving territory. However, until now, it has not been taught. You have not been trained to enter thriving territory with first having gathered the intel. And that is how we are looking at emotions, energy and motion, moving up and out to give us intel about what we may need in this given situation. So I'm going to back up here. I'm sharing an emotions wheel. This is a color emotions wheel. If you Google this, you can find probably 100 different types online. This is one that I happen to like. I like it because of some of the words it has. So when we look at primary emotions, anger, sadness, surprise, joy, love, fear, for example. These are some primary emotions. If you branch out from them, you will find synonyms or different hues or variations in intensity of those emotions. And so, what we are doing in the Optimal Response Initiative is continually gathering intel, energy, and motion to be courageous and curious about what we might be feeling, what we might need in this given situation for thriving. So we're constantly working on expanding the emotion vocabulary, the emote vocabulary, so that you can expand your intel in thriving situations for day-to-day life. Once we know what we are feeling and we want to be courageous and curious about what we are feeling, then we kind of hone in on which emotion is resonating with us on the emotions wheel in this moment. And we focus on that and say, okay, what is this emotion trying to tell me that maybe I need in this given situation, given the context, given who I am, where I am, what I want and need, and what that looks like. And a lot of times in the Optimal Response Initiative, maybe this is the first time you've had the opportunity to even think about what you want and need and what that looks like. Gathering intel with our emotions is a powerful, powerful tool. There aren't good and bad ones, positive, negative. There might be ones we enjoy more than others. However, they are all intel, and we want all the intel to figure out what we might need. Then we can be courageous and curious even more to brainstorm about how we can meet that need in a way that moves us towards optimal on the continuum response line. So energy and motion, emotes. This is gathering intel. Another tool that we utilize in the Optimal Response Initiative is the Thriving versus Merely Surviving handout. And this tool will be available for you in the module of the course. It's also in the ORI Tools course, where there's a tool, all the ORI tools are kind of condensed in one place for you if you want the tools, but not all the talk. But this is the Thriving versus Merely Surviving worksheet. And so what you're going to do is use your senses for thriving. You're going to sit for 10 minutes in your house or sit for 10 minutes outside. Do a breathing practice, your diaphragmatic breathing in through your nostrils, out through your mouth, or the physiological sigh breathing, where you're breathing in twice through the nostrils and then a long sigh, exhale through the mouth, like so breathing in twice through your nostrils and then a long sigh, exhale through the mouth. That's the physiological sigh, which can help reset, recalibrate, brings down anxiety very quickly. It's the quickest way to bring down anxiety without negative side effects. No medication required on that. And it's a powerful tool. If you want to do the deep diaphragmatic breathing, where you're breathing in through the nostrils, filling your diaphragm, and then exhaling through your mouth, that's going to be the big diaphragmatic breath, kind of the belly breathing. But either way, you're going to sit for 10 minutes. You're going to practice your breathing for recalibration for thriving. And then you're going to notice what you notice with your senses for thriving. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you touch? What's the texture of what you're sitting on? What do you feel as far as the temperature? If you're inside, is it warm? If you're outside, is the sun on your skin? Is there a breeze? Are you noticing birds and trees if you're outside? The glistening of the dew on the grass, different sounds, animals, etc., in your environment outside. Or if you're sitting in the house, what are you noticing? Different sounds, sounds of the clock, sounds of your dog's nails on the wood floors walking. Um, are you hearing the heater crank on or the furnace? So just different sounds and textures. Are you sitting on something soft and smooth and warm? Are you sitting on something cool maybe and smooth? So you're literally practicing noticing what you notice with your senses for thriving. You don't need help with the noticing what you notice for survival, because I guarantee you, if a Kodiak bear comes out of nowhere into your living room or comes out of nowhere in your backyard, don't worry. You will react in fight, run, or freeze mode, because you can't not. That's the beauty of the survival response. When we are doing optimal response initiative thriving training, we are not getting rid of the survival response. It's not possible. We are working on recalibration for thriving. And to do that, we need to strengthen our ability to notice what we notice with our senses for thriving's sake. Okay, so this is the thriving versus merely surviving worksheet or tool. You're also going to notice what emotions are you feeling in this moment. And that's using that emotions wheel or some of the other or I ones that I've created that are all kind of charts, where it lists different emotions and synonyms of an emotion. And so you're going to glance at the chart or think about different emotions and notice what are you feeling in this moment as you're doing this 5-10 minute breathing practice. Are you noticing peace or calm or anxiety or sadness or relief? Whatever it might be, you're noticing what you notice regarding your emotions in this thriving practice. So there's space to write down your emotions as well. So you're taking the time to notice what you notice for thriving. So there's a blank one for you to record. No wrong way to do this. You simply notice what you notice with your senses and record it for thriving's sake. This is your practice. If we don't train for thriving, it's really hard to be in thriving mode in a day-to-day life situation. If we are at 99.9 or 100 in survival mode, it's hard to notice anything other than using our senses for survival. And so we want to recalibrate that survival response, that high perceived stress response that is 1 to 100 for anything in life. It's not just a survival situation. It's a request for energy. So the sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, or freeze system, it's not only for Kodiak bears. I mean, perceived stress is a request for energy. So getting up is a request for energy. You're dealing with gravity. But even if you're laying flat and you're breathing, it's a request for energy. So you might be in your room, you might be comfortable. The perceived stress might be 50 or lower. And that's fine. That's what it is in the moment. If you get up and you're dealing with gravity, your perception of stress, the request for energy might be 50, 60, 70. Our thoughts and emotions are going to influence that perceived stress. So those thoughts and emotions can drive us closer to 100. And we might still be in our living room or in our bedroom or in our home. We can still have a high perceived stress response, a request for energy based on those thoughts and emotions given our current situation. So we can be at 100 dealing with an actual Kodiak bear as well. but we can be thinking about a Kodiak bear and be up at 100. So 1 to 100, we have requests for energy throughout the day. I want to challenge you to not think about stress as all negative or all just survival things. I want to challenge you to think about at any given point throughout the day, our perceived stress, our request for energy in day to day life for thriving is anywhere between 1 to 100. And what we're working on is recalibrating that perceived stress to under 100. I'm not going to promise that you're going to have a baseline of 50. Anybody promises you something like that, you need to exit stage left. But what I'm talking about is lowering that overall baseline so that, I mean, anything would feel better than 100. If you're at, between 80 and 90 or 70 and 80 or 60 and 70, that's going to feel better than being at 99.9 all the time. So that's what these exercises are doing. These are tools to help you recalibrate, practice sitting still with yourself, noticing what you notice with your senses for thriving's sake. This next image is looking at the default mode network versus the deliberate mode network. Default mode network also, I am associating that with the internal location of control. And what I mean by that is if I'm operating from an internal location of control, if it's raining outside and you ask me how I am, I'm going to say, okay, it's raining. Not my favorite weather. It makes my joints hurt more, but I'm going to make the best of it, try some new coffee, get some things done inside. And, you know, I don't have a tin roof, but people who have tin roofs and like the sound of rain on them, they don't mind it when they're home and it's raining because they can listen to the sound of the rain hitting the tin roof. So here I am operating from an internal location of control. I'm acknowledging that it's raining and the impact that it might have on my physical body, but I am identifying my thoughts and I am kind of directing my thoughts towards optimal versus letting the external situation of rain ruin and rule my day today. If I was operating from an external location of control and you asked me how I was, then I would say it's raining, makes my joints hurt more, it's going to be a cruddy day. So I am operating from an external location of control. I am reacting to the external rain versus optimally responding to what is going on and helping myself move towards optimal in my thoughts and my emotions. Okay? In addition to this, you can think about to what degree are we aware of our internal states, my thoughts, my emotions, whether I'm hungry, tired, thirsty, to what degree I'm focused on physical pain, chronic pain that I might be dealing with, that kind of stuff. So to what degree am I focused inward, internally, and to what degree am I focused outward, externally? External location of control or the deliberate mode network. This is kind of looking beyond my skin, choosing to focus on the external. And we always want to kind of be somewhere in the middle between awareness of internal stuff and awareness of external stuff, people, places, things. And if we have a default of being kind of more an introvert, so kind of recharging when you're by yourself. I don't have introvert, extrovert here, but I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. We all come into the world unique, and some of us are born more kind of introverts and some of us are born more kind of extroverts. Of course, biology, environment, and all that kind of stuff can influence to what degree we're engaging internally with ourselves or engaging externally with other people or avoiding self or avoiding others. So to stop and think about, kind of what is your default? Are you more of an introvert? Are you more of an extrovert? And either way, we are choosing to find the middle, kind of find that balance between focusing inward or spending time with self and focusing outward and spending time with others. We're kind of finding that nice balance in the middle for ourselves, as well as to what degree are we focused on the internal stuff going on within us, and to what degree are we focused on the external stuff going on beyond the confines of our skin, of our body. And we want to have a nice balance of both, because if I am trying to spend time with my husband, kids, grandkids, and I'm very internally focused, my thoughts, my emotions, chronic pain, it's really hard to be present with the people I love and care about and create new memories if I'm too internally focused, kind of in my own world somewhere else. Also, if I'm too externally focused, so I'm hyper focused on the people I love and care about, everything they want and need, busy, 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 doing what they want and need, highly focused on them, and not at all focused at what's going on with me or what I might want and need. So, those are two extreme examples. We want to have a nice balance of being aware of what's going on within us, being aware of what is going on beyond us, around us, and finding that nice balance of somewhere in the middle of internal and external. But in the Optimal Response Initiative, I do talk about operating from an internal location of control. And what I mean by that is we're going to be aware of the external, but we're going to not react, not be in that reactive trap. We are going to use our skills and identify where are we on the ORI continuum response line from worst to optimal. And you can see that above with the worst, lowercase better, to the 50-yard line, and from the 50-yard line all the way to optimal. Where am I right now in this particular sit rep situation in my life that I'm kind of analyzing? Where am I on the ORI continuum? And if I'm smack dab on worst, fine. What direction do I want to move? Anything I do now is going to be better than worst. And this is what I mean by operating from an internal location of control, by managing my thoughts, using my tools, and choosing how I'm going to optimally respond to move myself towards optimal. So there's a lot of different kind of concepts going on here, but the visual kind of breaks it down. And then, of course, I added some things, but we continue to talk about all of this in ORI in our thriving training. And the key is to recognize that we can choose, and we can deliberately choose what direction we move, and we want to be moving towards optimal. We want to be aware of defaults. We want to reset and create new balanced default places. And we want to be using our tools consistently to be aware of our internal states, be aware of what's going on externally, and choose to optimally respond in a balanced way based on who we are, what we like, what we need, and what that looks like. So this is just a reminder of kind of the ORI continuum response line. At any given moment, when I am dealing with external people, places, things, my external environment, and dealing with internal things, my thoughts, memories, emotions, chronic pain, whether I'm tired, thirsty, hungry, whether I had a dream, the degree to which I slept good or not, etc. And we're dealing with both. We're dealing with our internal stuff, and we're dealing with our environments and people in them, or that nobody might be in them right now in this moment. Where are we on the ORI continuum response line? What direction do we want to move? We just bought ourselves some time, and we definitely want to move towards optimal big picture. Anything we do now is going to be better than worst. This is a no fail system. You can see that anything is better, whether it's lowercase better or capital better. Anything we do now is going to be more of an optimal response than what we would have just done in the knee jerk reaction pattern. And I wanted to bring this up. This is chapter 9 of the Optimal Response Initiative, external versus internal location of control. So one of the tools or kind of things that we talk about is, what kind of tree are we dealing with? You know a tree by the fruit that it bears. So if I am hyper focused on the external stuff, and I am standing in front of an animated apple tree, so we're going to say that the type of person in front of me is kind of like an apple tree, okay? They're bearing apples, healthy apple tree. If I stand in front of a healthy apple tree and ask it for oranges, it cannot give me oranges because it's an apple tree, right? So if I'm hyper focused on the external and I'm asking an apple tree who can't give me apples for oranges, I'm going to stand there for a long time, a month, a year, decades. And it's going to be really, really frustrating because I'm externally focused on this apple tree. I want the apple tree to give me oranges, and it can't. Even if it wanted to, it couldn't. So what kind of tree are we dealing with? What kind of people are in your day-to-day life, whether it's friends, family, people you work with in the community? What kind of trees are we dealing with? Because the type of tree we're dealing with can really help us kind of set realistic expectations regarding what we expect that tree to be able to give or do for us. If I'm standing in front of an orange tree, it can't give me apples. If I'm standing in front of a rotten fig tree, it can't even give me healthy figs, let alone an apple or an orange. So a lot of times we'll say, what kind of tree are you dealing with? What kind of people are you dealing with? If that person was a tree, what kind of tree would it be? Would it be bearing fruit? Is it not bearing fruit because it's rotten? And what are you expecting that person or that tree to give you or do for you? And is it even something that they can give you or do for you, even if they really want to? So that's one of the tools. You know a tree by the fruit that it bears. And we don't want to be so externally focused on the type of tree and what we quote capital letter need it to give us, because that's being kind of stuck in our external reaction trap. So in ORI, we're stepping back and looking at things, kind of assessing these things, and then deciding how we're going to more optimally respond based on identifying all these variables, like, for example, in a sit rep, in a sit report. What are the facts? What is going on in my body physiologically with the stress response? Heart racing, my breathing is changing, muscle tension, for example. What are my thoughts that I'm having? Like, this apple tree should give me an orange, or this rotten fig tree should give me a healthy fig. And I'm going to be stuck in that reaction trap. What emotions, energy, emotion? What's the intel that is moving up and out to try to give me information about what I might need in this particular situation? And are my, expectations and what I'm trying to get from this person or this tree, is it realistic? What is more realistic for me? What do I want and need? And how can I respond instead of react in more optimal ways? And then we're taking thoughts in the sit rep and we're reframing them into more helpful, optimal thoughts as well. But this is just one of the tools. You know a tree by the fruit that it bears. So if we say, what kind of tree are you dealing with? This is what we're talking about. This is in chapter 9 of the Optimal Response Initiative. So in internal location of control, we're focused on thoughts, I statements, what I can control, which is identify my thoughts and my emotions, reframe my thoughts, and more optimally respond. If I'm stuck in an external location of control focus, I'm focused on people and circumstances, all the stuff that I can't change. And so we want to be operating from an internal location of control, using our tools and responding optimally to all the external stuff around us, as well as responding more optimally to the internal stuff going on within us, thoughts, emotions, etc. Gathering that intel, even if it's me, myself, and I having a meeting with myself about my thoughts and emotions, then I'm being more empowered to optimally respond to all that stuff going on within me. As well as if it's a lot of stuff going on around me, I still want to be aware of what are the facts of the situation, the people, places, things, what's going on, what's the context, what's going on with my physical, stress response in the body. What are my thoughts about it, about myself in it, about the people around me, my perception of these things, etc. What are the emotions, energy and motion moving up and out to give me intel about what I need? And what is my previous or maybe present reactive pattern that I'm trying to get out of and create a new, more optimal response? And what is going to be my new, more optimal response given this sit rep? And if my thoughts that have been going around are, closer to worst or negative worst, definitely want to get a hold of those and reframe them into more optimal thoughts that help me move towards optimal on the ORI continuum response line. And just to kind of break down, when you know how you feel, you can identify what you need. And then you can begin to move in healthy ways to meet those needs. The more you understand your emotions and your needs, the more meaning making or making meaning out of the stuff you've been through and the stuff you're currently going through. So responding in a more optimal way. That's what I mean by meaning making. If I think that everything bad happens to me because I'm a bad person, or that I should just get everything 100% perfect all the time. If that's the meaning that I'm attaching to my situations, it's going to be really hard for me to thrive. If the meaning that I'm attaching to my situations and experience is, I'm doing the best I can with who I am, where I am, and the resources that I have, then that is a more optimal way to kind of attach meaning to my situations and experiences in a way that helps me have flexibility and balance and move towards optimal. So that's what I mean by the more meaning making, optimal meaning making that you engage in, you'll be able to apply these skills to your life. And just to break it down and kind of remind us, we have events, we have situations going on, we have a stress response in the body, the heart is beating, might be breathing more quickly. Breathing might be short and shallow in the chest. Muscles might be tense, etc. So we're noticing physiologically what's going on. Then we have thoughts. What are the thoughts that we're having about ourselves, other people, in this current situation? What are the emotions, energy and motion, which is the intel, moving up and out to give us intel about what we need, and then what are the previous or present reactive behaviors? And then based on doing this sit rep, based on using these ORI skills, based on focusing on thriving versus only surviving, what are my more optimal behaviors that I want to choose and engage in moving forward? Also, we want to point out, just kind of like I did at the beginning with the emotions wheel, looking up one emotion in a synonym finder, finding different synonyms or variations of intensity of that emotion. We want to recognize that every emotion, this one gives the example of mad. So from irritated all the way towards rage, there's different levels of intensity, different synonyms from irritated to mad to rage. And there's way more than three. I'm going to take the emotion of sad here. If we look up sad in a synonym finder, look at all the different variations from 0 to 100, and really 1 to 100, different levels of intensity, different variations of intensity with all these synonyms. We've got, for sad, we've got bereaved, bitter, blue, cheerless, dejected, despairing, despondent, dismal, distressed, doleful, down in the dumps, down in the mouth, that must be an old one, downcast, forlorn, gloomy, glum, grief-stricken, grieved, heartbroken, heartsick, heavy-hearted, hurting, in the doldrums, in grief, in the dumps, languishing. Oh, it sounds intense, doesn't it? Low-spirited, melancholy, morbid, mournful, out of sorts, pensive, pessimistic, sick at heart, somber, sorrowful, sorry, troubled, weeping, wistful, woe begone. That one really sounds old, doesn't it? Okay, but this helps expand our emotional vocabulary, because am I sad or am I sick at heart? Am I sad or am I down in the dumps? Am I sad or am I heartbroken? Because heartbroken is gives us more of a description than sad, because sad can mean a lot of things and have a lot of different intensities. And it's not listed on here, but am I sad or am I hopeless? Am I sad or am I feeling worthless, cheerless? Am I sad or am I troubled? So when you think about different emotions, energy and motion, if you're sad, you're sad. But then I want to challenge you to ask yourself, what else might I be feeling in addition to sad? What other different levels of intensity of sadness am I feeling? And write down the ones that resonate with you, okay? Because we're expanding the emotional intel, the energy and motion moving up and out to give you intel about what you might need once you know what you're feeling, and you're honing in on that intel, those emotes and the variations of emotes, you can be courageous and curious and brainstorm about what those emotions are telling you that you might need in this given situation. And then you can continue to be courageous and curious and identify how you might meet those identified needs in healthy ways that move you towards optimal. And so we want as much intel as we can get. But we don't want to just expand the emotional vocabulary for sad and sit and light a candle to all these painful emotions. That, in and of itself, is not going to be helpful. But when we take the emotion, energy emotion of sad, we expand the emotional vocabulary for the purpose of gathering the intel about what those emotions are telling us that we need. We're identifying needs, wants, needs. Then, after we've identified those, we can identify, brainstorm, be courageous and curious about how do I meet those needs in healthy ways. And we'll talk about this in a moment on a speedometer. I've talked about the sit rep before, the sit report. And so that's a tool that you've known for a while. And I'm kind of talking through a sit rep as I'm talking about emotions. But I'm going to also talk about a speedometer for emotions and at the end here. Let's look at the synonym of love. Do I love somebody or something? Or do I feel the emote of adoration, affection, allegiance, amour? Isn't that French for love? I'm not sure. Um, Attachment. Am I attached in healthy ways or not so healthy ways? Do I cherish the person? Do I have a crush on them? Do I delight in the person? Do I feel devotedness, devotion, enchantment? Do I enjoy the person or thing? Am I experiencing, well, it says flame. So instead of love, a flame, fondness, friendship. Do I love pizza or do I have a hankering for it? Idolatry. I guess anything we love could become an extreme. Inclination, infatuation, involvement. So involvement is a lot different than idolatry. Like, to what degree are we involved with somebody or something, right? Do I love them or it or the thing, the activity, or do I like it? Do I love them or do I lust after them? Am I mad for? Do I have a partiality for them or passion? Am I raptured by them or the thing? Goodness, these are pretty intense, right? Descriptive. Do I regard them, have a high regard for them, respect, have sentiment, have a soft spot, a taste for, a tenderness, a weakness, um, worship, a yearning, zeal? So when you think about the word love, the emotion of love moving up and out to give us intel about what we need, all of these variations of the emotion, the word of love, has so many different nuances to, what is this different synonym for love telling me that maybe I need? And is one of these other words kind of hitting the nail on the head for, based on this sit rep, based on this moment for myself and kind of what I'm thinking about and identifying emotions about, which one hits the nail on the head for me in this moment? And then I can hone in on that one or those ones and ask myself, okay, what are these emotions telling me that I need? Then I can brainstorm about different needs that they're telling me that I might have, and then how can I meet those needs in healthy ways that move me towards optimal? So we become empowered. The more we expand our emotional vocabulary, the more that we have the courage and the curiosity, and choose courage and curiosity to sit and consider, what am I feeling? What do I need? What does that look like? And how do I move towards optimal to identify my emotions, gather the intel, identify the needs, and move towards optimal in this current situation for thriving? And research shows that the more descriptive we are with the emotions that we're feeling, the more relief we can feel from the intensity of the emotion. At the same time, and this might sound contradictory, but the more I expand the emotions and consider what I might be feeling, so if I'm kind of expanding what emotion am I feeling in addition to what synonyms to sadness or anger, for example, am I feeling? If I focus on those and expand that emotional vocabulary and identify the nuances and a lot of different variations of sad or anger, in one way I could get relief from the intensity. In another way, it could increase the intensity. That sounds contradictory, but what we focus on is what we experience. And this is why we don't want to only focus on the emotions and expanding our emotional vocabulary. That in and of itself is not going to be helpful. Might even feel worse for having done that. If all we are doing is focus on sad and all the intensity of sadness, how is that going to be beneficial in and of itself? Or anger, for example. This is why there's a sit rep. We are looking at not only what emotions are we feeling, the variations of the emotion, but what are those emotions, energy and motion, telling us that we need, that we want in this particular situation. We're doing it for the sake of gathering the intel, to be empowered, to get the information from the energy and motion, the intel about what we might need in this given situation. Then we are courageous and curious about how to meet those needs in healthy ways to move towards optimal. And then we take action and we move towards optimal. If we only light a candle to all the variations of sadness, we're going to feel worse. If we only light a candle to all the variations of anger, we're going to feel worse. So we're not just expanding emotional vocabulary here. We're doing it to gather the intel to then do something with it, to move up and out, to move out into thriving territory. This is preparing you. This is training you, giving you resources, skills, tools, all kinds of things so that you can step into thriving territory in your living room, in your community, in your relationships with yourself, with other people. And you can move through that territory in more optimal ways for thriving. Okay, I think you're tracking. Last but not least, this is the speedometer for emotions. So you're going to take one emotion. This one I give the example of anxious. Okay. All the other synonyms, the ones that resonate with you, you're going to put in order from lower speed to higher speed, or lower intensity to higher intensity. So I break this down into a speedometer. We've got different synonyms. We've got at 15 miles per hour, uneasy, 25 miles per hour, ill at ease, 35 miles per hour, impatient, 45 miles per hour, concerned, 55 miles per hour, apprehensive. At 65, we're at worried. 70, we're at confused. 75, we're at fearful. 80, we're at scared. 85, trapped. 90, terrified. 100 miles per hour, panic. Okay, so from lower speed to higher speed. So instead of just, I'm feeling anxious, here's all the variations of the intensity of that emotion at different speeds from 15 miles per hour all the way to 100. But why are we doing this? So we can expand our emotional vocabulary. And for each one, we're going to say, what is that emotion telling me maybe that I need? So if I'm feeling uneasy, I need relief. How can I meet that need for relief in a healthy way? Maybe I can do my breathing practice. See? So now I'm going to do my breathing practice. I'm going to manage the emotion at the speed of 15 miles per hour so I don't get to the point where I'm getting a super speeder ticket in my living room or in my life with my emotions, with my relationship with self and others. But I got to be aware of what is my speed, what is the emotion, what is it telling me that I need, and then I need to choose to move in the direction of meeting that need in a healthy way. Okay, 25 miles per hour is ill at ease. What is that telling me that I need? How about calm? Okay, how can I meet that need for calm in a healthy way? Listen to music. The next emotion, the next speed is 35 miles per hour, impatient. Then I need patience. How can I meet the need for patience in a healthy way? I'm going to visualize my continuum response line from worst to optimal and ask myself, where am I on the ORI continuum response line? To buy myself time, to increase the likelihood that I'm focused on being patient versus impatient. The next one is 45 miles per hour, concerned. If I'm feeling concerned, what do I need? Assurance. There's no wrong answer here. Whatever comes to mind. You could do the opposite of the emotion or whatever comes up for you. You could identify that as the need. So if I am concerned, I need assurance. How can I meet the need for assurance for myself in a healthy way? Maybe I'm going to research and gather intel from reliable sources. Okay, for 55 miles per hour, apprehensive. I need confidence. Okay, how am I going to meet the need that I have? I need more confidence right now in this situation for thriving. Maybe I'm going to remind myself of my why. 65 miles per hour, I'm worried. So I need reassurance, maybe. How am I going to meet the need for reassurance in a healthy way? I'm going to identify and focus on my morals, my faith, my beliefs. Okay? 70 miles per hour, confused. I need clarity. Maybe I'm going to identify the facts in a sit rep. Maybe I'm going to do an entire sit rep, which starts with identifying the facts. Or maybe right now I'm going to simply identify the facts of the situation. Okay, 75 miles per hour, fearful that I need safety. How am I going to meet the need for safety in a healthy way? Maybe I'm going to consider the context, remind myself that feeling fear does not mean that I am in a dangerous place. I can have an internal feeling of fear, but it doesn't mean I'm in danger. I'm going to remind myself that I can have internal triggers like fear, but that doesn't automatically mean that I'm in danger. For example, once we look at the situation, there's no Kodiak bear coming at us. Maybe it feels like as I'm working on this math, I feel a lot of intensity and I feel unsafe. But unsafe from what? The math test or the math homework? So I'm going to remind myself that I can feel fear, but it doesn't mean I'm in danger. I can use my skills and recalibrate, bring it down so I can focus on math and stay in this thriving situation, for example. If I'm feeling scared, maybe I need support, and I'm going to identify supportive activities or people or things that I can engage in. 85 miles per hour trapped, maybe I need freedom. Well, maybe I do some breathing practice to reduce my anxiety, or I step outside, whatever feeling more freedom feels for me in that moment. If I'm feeling terrified, maybe I need tenacity. Need to remind myself to be tenacious, to persevere towards my goals, identify the pros and cons from focusing on a place of tenacity versus focusing on terror. I can choose what I'm focused on. I can engage in activities that help reduce anxiety, increase the likelihood of peace, contentment, confidence, acceptance, patience, calm, relief, for example. If I'm feeling panic, I need peace, man. I need relief from the panic. I'm going to visualize and do some kind of visualization, relaxation practice. I'm going to recalibrate and bring the speed down. So this is an example of taking an emotion, expanding the emotional vocabulary, because that's going to empower us to be able to identify needs. And then we're going to continue to be courageous and curious about what are the needs? How can I meet these needs in healthy ways? And now we've created a speedometer for an emotion and all the variations of the emotion for ourselves. Now that's being empowered with intel to thrive. And that's what emotions are: energy, emotion, moving up and out to identify what we might need and help us then be courageous and curious about how we might meet that need or those needs in healthy ways and move us towards optimal on the ORI continuum response line. All right, so I just want to say to everyone, yeah, I am glad that you're here. I'm glad that we are connected. Together we are stronger. Together we thrive. You are not alone. Stay alert, stay alive, and thrive. The training does continue, and we will talk soon.